Babylon Bee interview show is beginning right now.
Right here.
Right
now.
Yeah. Now. And today we're talking to Josh Denny. We tried to get a little diversity in the show, so we asked a white guy to come on.
Yeah. Well, he's a ginger, though. He's a ginger. And he's also...
Ginger.
He's more in my like weight range, which I always feel like the the fattest guy in the room. And I think I might have I still was, but like at least...
Is that why you invited him?
Yeah.
That's really...
That's every fat guy walks through and goes, am I the fattest guy in this room? Yeah.
So if you find someone that's a little more, you feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
Got it.
Right.
Got it.
Anyway, so Josh worked in the Food Network. He got paid to eat huge food. And he had a show called Ginormous Food. And he ate ginormous food. And it was cool. And so we talked a lot about that. I'm kind of fascinated by getting paid to eat huge food. I always want to know how you get paid to do that.
Sounds like you had a lot of personal reasons for bringing Josh in here. All right, well, you can check out Josh's comedy, joshdennycomedy.com, and you can support him, joshdenny.locals.com.
That's right.
Let's bring him in.
Let's do it. He'll be coming into this chair.
Right there.
Right here.
Food, liberty, comedy, all areas of expertise for our guest today.
Yeah.
That was pretty good, right?
Yeah, it's a great, it sounds very, I don't know if I'm an expert on liberty.
Controversy.
Yeah. I think you can tell by looking at me, I'm definitely pretty proficient in the food world. Somebody asked me the other day, they're like, what were your qualifications that got you a food show? I was like, well, this is my literal body of work.
That is my the instant question I want to ask. Like, how do you get the show where you're the guy that eats the biggest food there is?
The answer is I got very lucky. I mean,
But would they have hired a skinny guy?
I don't know. Probably not. Now that I think about it. Well, you know what's interesting is I think I fit two criteria at the time that they were casting my show. Because if you look at the guy who was hired to do a show right after me, it was Casey Webb, who is the host of the rebooted Man vs. Food. He's a fat redheaded guy too.
Okay.
So either they literally got him as like a backup Josh Denny, or I think the woman in development who developed both shows and rebooted that one has a thing for chunky gingers. So,
or she just associates.
Yeah. But I mean, she was the one who did like Bert the Conqueror, and so she kind of gave Bert Kreischer his first show. So yeah, I don't know. I think them in general, they just like fat, silly guys.
But do they like scout you out? Like they show up at you're doing stand up one night and they come like, hey, we think we like you a lot.
No, it was totally random the way it happened. So I had started like a food comedy podcast probably like a year before I ever heard from anybody. And I just got this random email from a woman who had this little production company out of Nashville or Knoxville. And I was like, this isn't, I was like, somebody trolling me. This isn't real. And she's like, yeah, we are interested in looking at you for a possible show. And I was like, okay. Real funny. And then she was like, self-tape doing it. And the whole time I'm thinking this is fake. Their website was like a splash page. And I was just like, okay, this is somebody with an elaborate trick. And then turned out it was real. And then we ended up shooting a sizzle and then got a pilot, shot a pilot. It was supposed to be a Travel Channel show. And then Kathleen Finch, the president of Scripps at the time, was like, no, I think this is a Food Network show. And then we got pushed over to Food Network. So it was like this really kind of magical 12-month period of going from being a completely unknown dude to having one of the top new shows on their network. So it was very, very lucky, stream of events. And, I'm definitely grateful for it. It was a fun time and a total blast. Like making a show like that is harder work than you think, but it is as fun as you think it is.
Did you originally were they thinking you got to eat the whole thing?
Yeah, at first I thought we didn't know what the show was going to be. Like, part of the process, unless you're like an established person pitching a clearly defined idea, part of the process is like sort of them sitting back and assessing you like livestock. Like, what do we want to do with him?
Yeah.
And they were like, let's see how much we can shove in his face. And then they're like, well, let's just, we have that show already. That's another guy. But what if we shove some of it in his face and then we shove it in strangers' faces and he makes commentary? And they're like, that's a new thing. Let's do that. So that's what the show became. And the part of the reason it became that was because that was, being a comedian, that was more entertaining. It was like doing crowd work. So they liked the footage of me riffing with people and kind of messing with people while they're making a fool of themselves trying to eat, a 10-pound burger. And then that sort of became the show. So the show wasn't even really the show until it was done, if that makes sense. Like you kind of are developing it as you go. And they cut the company I worked for, Lucid, they cut like 4 different shows basically. And then Ginormous Food was the one that ended up being sold. So it's kind of weird how that process works. But you have a lot of these sort of like boutique production companies that all year round, they're just conceptualizing shows, finding people to host them, and seeing what sticks. So it's kind of like a dartboard approach.
Do you hold any Guinness records for food consumed?
No, I don't. I generally try to do all of my record setting consumption in private.
Yeah.
Like any good shameful American.
Right.
Yeah. It's funny because when the show first started, I was like, the only scandal I'm looking forward to having is like when TMZ catches me in a dark parking lot at 3 a.m. just power shredding burritos, in shame. Just get out of here. Don't look at me. I thought that was going to be my scandal video. It's like, Kevin Hart's cheating on his wife in that car on the other side of the parking lot. Go film him.
I thought it'd be a scandal for you. Would be like if you're like caught eating like a little tiny acai bowl.
Well, what's funny is that was like that. So this is what was hilarious is when we did the show in the beginning, this is what a lot of people don't realize. When you sign a futures contract, they do this massive deep dive in your background. And so before we ever launched the show, I had a conference call with like the president of the network, their HR, their PR, all of their people. And they literally like went through my tweets and my comedy and everything else. Wow. And they're like, how are we going to address any of this if it comes up? And I go, the blanket answer is I'm a stand-up comedian. None of it should be taken seriously, etc. And they go, okay, well, we just don't want any outrage about this when the show launches. And the show launches, and there are 2 points of outrage. One was that we were wasting food, and there were literally thousands of comments. There are starving children in Africa, and you're just wasting all this food. And in reality, we probably wasted less food than most food shows because we would give it away to the entire restaurant. And so almost everything we cooked got eaten or taken home with people. Whereas like in a competition show, everything you see that gets cooked gets thrown away. All of it. And particularly like in New York, they're not even allowed to give it to homeless people because of the stuff that they do to make it look good. It's considered then inedible.
It's all glued together or whatever.
It's a liability. Yeah. It's this weird thing for people. He's faking it. Look, they cut away every time he bites into it. It's like, yeah, because I have a beard. And like, if you ever seen a guy with a beard, like, you know what it's like. You have a beard.
Yeah.
You take a bite of a giant burger. You come up, there's sauce all over your face.
Yeah. Nobody wants to see
What am I going to do? Let's like completeless sauce beard and just cut the camera. Like, so next thing you know, we're going to... It's like, it's called editing, morons.
I like the idea that, feeding, the people that were upset about, you should feed this to the hungry. I like the idea of like, you're like, okay, we just ate this massive, 30-mile sub sandwich. Now let's see what the people in this, Africa think of this. And all of a sudden you see it being airdropped into a village. Yeah. They don't even see it coming. They're like, what the heck?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then civil war breaks out over who gets the sandwich.
And you parachute in and you talk to them.
Yeah. I would love to do that. I would love to go to the third world. And
just airdrop a massive pizza. It's like the size of the village.
But that's the funny thing is you'd go, there's enough to feed everyone. And then one tribe would be like, no, we kill them, we take it all.
You start wars.
It's like
flower bed.
Africa, we have enough for everybody. Like, never enough.
I get the last slice.
Yeah.
I like when people say that there's this image like there's all these kids around your table and there's a trash can and you're eating, you're like looking at them. You're like, no. Trash can.
Oh yeah. Well, it's so funny too. And there were times where like there was one where we were filming like a remote and we were doing it outdoors and we had this giant burger and there was a homeless guy who came up and he was like, y'all gonna throw that away? We're like, no, you can have it. He's like, I don't eat meat. It's like, I know that sounds like a cliche made up story. He's like, I don't eat meat. We're just like, what? He's like, but I might be able to sell it to another homeless guy that does. And I was like, dude, we're going to leave this on the edge of the trash can. Do with it whatever you want to do. And I was like, by the way, it has bug repellent on it because we couldn't have flies in the shot. And he's like, oh, it's fine. We eat bug repellent all the time. It's like South Carolina. He's like, yeah, if you can't eat food with bug repellent on it, you died years ago out here in the streets. It's like this grizzled homeless ex-vet who's just like, yeah, I eat bug repellent on everything. It's fine.
It's like the right one. You just spray bug repellent on the food?
Yeah, to keep bugs away from it because nobody wants to see you holding like a giant burger in front of a Civil War monument. Probably in bad taste for the show.
Anyway, it's already.
We didn't really. It's so funny. There's
the
like
bugs
worried
are the
about
least
your.
offensive
They're
part
like, they're like, we're worried about some of your jokes that you do as a stand-up comedian. Also, stand in front of Ulysses S. Grant and hold up this burger that could feed the entire city.
Did you ever eat something that you were like, oh, this is gross, I don't like it, but you had to pretend you liked it?
Yeah, there was one place in Mobile, Alabama. It was like this beer garden, and then this is like there was a whole scandal around this episode that I didn't even realize, and I was pretty pissed off about it. Turns out, and this is something you never think of, sometimes food. So what happened at this restaurant was the local food supplier wanted to be on TV, and he paid the restaurant that we had auditioned to be on the show to let him be the chef on the show. This guy wasn't even a trained chef.
Okay.
So like we get in there and like this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know how to fry things. He doesn't know how to cook things. I mean, like when I'm telling somebody how to fry something and I'm supposed to be the comedy relief of the show, there's a problem. And so like he hands me like this, it was like a bacon wrapped corn dog and I bite into it and it's raw.
Oh.
Raw bacon, raw hot dog. And I spit it out on camera. I'm like freaking out. I'm like, dude, I just ate a mouthful of salmonella. And my culinary producer's like, I don't know what he's doing. Like, I don't get this thing. They didn't find out until later. So like sometimes in the restaurant, depending on the way, what we're shooting, my crew would either go in before me and film all of like what we call the beauties. So you get all the close-up shots of food, all of the B-roll in the kitchen, all of the B-roll in the lobby or the the restaurant itself. And then I would come in and do the crowd stuff and everything afterwards, or we would do that first and they would stay later. For the place in Mobile, and their big thing was like a donut burger. It was like the most unimaginative thing. It was conceptualized by a guy who's a food supplier and not a chef. And so they just wanted the press, and this guy just wanted to be on television and like literally paid the restaurateur to pretend he was their chef for the day. Which pissed off the actual chef, who was literally in the restaurant sabotaging everything that we were doing throughout the day because he was pissed off. So like I was like literally waiting for this guy to like poison people's beers so that everyone in the wide shots start throwing up. I mean, the dude was livid. And so like I feel sick. I get done and I go back to the hotel, and then later that night, the crew's down, and the hotel in Mobile had like this little cafe where you could get like packaged salads and stuff or whatever late at night. So I went down there and I was like, I'm not hungry. I'll just eat a salad because I feel like crap after eating all this raw food in the morning. And they tell me everything they found out about this after we left, that they basically they like auctioned off the ability to be on the show as the chef. And I was like, how hard up as a restaurant do you have to be? Like, you're going to get enough money from the exposure of being on this television show, but you got to bleed it dry that much more to where they actually like auctioned off the ability to be on the show with me in secret. And then had me working with a guy that wasn't even a chef. And I was like, how does that get by our people? I literally was on the phone with our producers the next morning, this can't ever happen. If I ever get to, and I was like, I'm not a diva, but if I ever get to a place and I find this out again, I'm not shooting. We're not going to give a restaurant this exposure when they're basically lying to people. And I said, there are two ways I will walk out of a restaurant. Is one, if I think they're over their workers, and they're not, if I find out it's a place like Batali's restaurants where they're skimming tips or taking money from their workers, I won't film there. Or if they're not up to snuff health-wise and we're going to send people into a restaurant where they're going to get sick, I'm not going to film there. And we had one of those in season 1. We went to this Mexican restaurant in Virginia, And it was like, dude, there were like rats in the kitchen. And I was like, yo, I was like, I know I'm new here and the show hasn't aired yet and we don't know what it is. But like, if I ever walk into a restaurant that has rodents in the kitchen, we're not filming. So send the scout team there ahead of time. And if there's rats in the kitchen, we're not going to film there. Like, just so you know, I almost walked out. I was, dude, I don't want to send people to a restaurant that's going to get them sick. Yeah. You know what I mean? I was just like, and they made so many excuses. They were like, we're sorry. The owner's been out sick for like 2 weeks. And I go 2 weeks and it turns into a rat hole. Like, you know, I worked in corporate retail for a long time. And one of my great bosses, a dude named Rob, who's still one of my very good friends and has always been like a second dad to me. He used to tell me when I was like a 19-year-old store manager at Hollywood Video, he would come into my store and I would go, yeah, we just cleaned that 2 weeks ago. And he would go, yeah, there's new dirt and there's old dirt. And that's old dirt. Don't flower bed. Lie to me. And so I remember they're like, yeah, the rats weren't here 2 weeks ago. Yeah, this flower bed. 2 keys to this place, okay? It's not 2 weeks old. It's been here for a while. That rat's building an addition on in the back. I see what's happening here.
That surprises me. I would have thought Virginia would have great Mexican food.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that should have been the telltale sign right away. But I will tell you, like, there's weird things. Like, we went to this other restaurant in Mobile that was called, God, what was the woman's name? But it was this amazing, if you go back, if you can find the episode of Ginormous Food, she was like, Vietnamese or Korean immigrant who was adopted by, Southern Baptists. Mm-hmm. And so you meet this woman who's like 100% Asian. And she's like, hey, sweetheart, how you doing? And like, that's first of all, that's jarring. Yeah. Okay. But she had her entire restaurant was like Asian soul food fusion, and it was amazing. And so you would never think like, Mobile known for its Asian food. But I mean, there are those places where it's amazing. But no, you're right. The Virginia Mexican food run by white people was as bad as you could imagine it would be. And that's where racism can save your life. I think if you walk into a Mexican restaurant, you see all white people, walk out, save yourself the trouble. It's not safe in there.
In the sushi restaurant too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was an episode of The League, wasn't it? Where they walk in and the guy doing sushi was a white guy, and he's like, I can't eat this. I won't eat it. So it's there's some times where I think you can safely go like this is not who I want making this cuisine.
I know as a I've been a fat guy my whole life. I don't like being looked at while I eat.
No.
It's it's a place of shame for me. So I don't like eyes on me. So. Yeah. So was that weird for you at first to have a camera in your face as you're eating like the most messy, biggest thing? I guess at the same time you're being,
Yeah, you kind of get over it really quickly. Like you just it's in a weird way. It's like it stops being eating when you're doing it on TV. Like it's like acting. It's like the idea of me doing stunts. It's like I wouldn't do this in real life anyway. So run? You want me to run? Okay, well if we're filming something, that's fine, but I'm not going to do it on my own time. So it's like it's a weird thing of where there is this separation, and there's so many people around that it stops. Like I agree with you. Like if I were just sitting somewhere eating by myself and somebody were like staring at me from the other side, I would get up and say something. But when there's like 2 cameras and a sound guy holding a boom like right over your mouth, and a director off screen going like, smile. It's like there's so many things going on in your brain that looking fat is like the least of your concerns, right?
They're like, can you close your eyes tightly as you bite this time? Like more passion.
Oh yeah, that's real direction where they're just like, like you gotta like get in there. Just get in there. I mean, we had 2 directors for my show. We had Mags Miller, who was great. She was like kind of hardcore, and really dark and funny. But our main director was this guy, David Konchnik, I think is how you say his name. He's done a lot of like reality stuff over the years, and you can find he does stuff like Nat Geo and everything else, but just like such a fun, playful guy. And I always loved, he would always be kind of afraid to come over to me. after like I did it, because some of these big bites, it's like you get one take. It's like blowing up a meth lab in an action film. Like, all right, we got one shot at this. We're not making 10 of these burgers. And so, you know, we really had to get good at like getting the bite. And there'd be times where he'd come over and he's just like holding the monitor in his hand, and he looks like coming over to tell me my dog just died. And he's like, we didn't get it. No, you got to do it again. And I was like, oh man, really? So eventually, like, you do that 2 times, and then you're like, I'm going to go all in on this. And look, and it got to a point where it's like, the more ridiculous you look biting into something like that, the better it is and the funnier it is. So the ridiculous one we did was like, we did a Thanksgiving themed burger in Georgia. And this thing was like, they made it in a full size cheesecake tin. That gives you an idea of like, how big this thing was. And it was probably this tall when I was eating it. So like literally it's like, how do you don't even, but just shove your face in it and look stupid. And which is pretty much the best advice you could give anybody in a food show. Shove your face in it and don't be afraid to look stupid. So
Now, did you do all your own eating action shots, or was there?
Yeah, I didn't have a stunt mouth. No. Although there were 2 things that happened. There were a lot of people like, hey man, if you need help eating that, you just hit me up. And I always wanted to be able to try to call one of those guys and go, hey, I need help. Get in the car and meet us in Tampa. The other one too was I would get emails every week about my grandson looks just like you, and it would just be a fat guy with glasses. Doesn't even have to be redheaded. It was just like every fat person with glasses became my doppelganger while that show was on the air. I got pictures of like 300-pound black dudes with glasses. I'm like, my grandson, just like you. It's like, all right, I think we're getting a little liberal with what it means to be a fat guy with glasses, but okay.
But yeah, you do tend to just, the more fat you get, the more like everybody kind of looks alike. Maybe like if everybody got really fat, we'd all look like the same person.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But it is one of those things.
Like babies.
I did start replying to some of those and go, oh, so we're just all the same to you? You can't tell us apart?
I always wanted to know, and maybe this is why your show didn't last. They like people.
Now what's coming? They like a number of things.
Well, they like people with like a lot of product in their hair and dyed blonde.
Yeah,
like every single chef, like
bleached,
every
like total
bleached.
Yep.
It's like a lesbian walking her dog in Portland kind of hairdo.
You know what it's very true. It's very true. You want to know the cringiest part of the show was when they dissected what my look was going to be. That was when I felt the most gross. So you say like, I don't like people watching me eat.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than like 2 40-year-old women putting clothes on you and then talking about how disgusting your body looks in an outfit.
Yeah.
Like literally in a hotel room in West Hollywood. Yeah, but at least my significant other will lie to me so that I don't kill myself. She'll at least go like, yeah, you look great. What are you doing? Like these women are like, no, look how your side
turnip
coming out of this t-shirt. We can't do that. Is there some kind of jacket we can put on it to make it like, I mean, wardrobing is the worst. As a fat dude, it is the most uncomfortable thing. And then of course the stylist has a hot 22-year-old assistant who's like, they're like, Vanessa, would you?
Hacksaw.
No, never in my life. Is there an outfit that we could put on him that would make you change your mind? She's like, I don't know. Maybe give us a $10,000 budget. We'll see what we can do. I mean, and I was like, I'm eating giant food. Nobody has to want
Flower bed.
Like, why can't I wear a t-shirt and just be a dumb guy? And they're like, no, we need a cool jacket, some product in your hair. How long should the beard be? I mean, these are real discussions they have. And I was just like, oh, is this what, in a way I was like, if this is what women go through, I get it. Like, this is horrific.
Let's see, Patrick furiously typing all the spots he's got to censor.
He's got a lot of editing to do.
Yeah, I didn't even ask how
you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, how much liberty do you want me to express?
It's like the cable version.
Yeah,
you have a different word that goes over.
Oh, there were so many. I mean, there are probably award-winning shows on the cutting room floor of Ginormous Food of like really funny things. And then what was funny is we had a focus group feedback come back one time, and they're like, where they really start to tune out is when you try to be funny. And I was like, well, it's a real good thing you got a comedian to host this show. But we would do so many like really funny bits that they would just never put in the show. They're so formulaic. It's like it's like paint by numbers. They're literally like food shot, action shot, walk up shot, food shot. Like every show, if you were to line them up, they almost cut exactly the same way.
It's like 2 Nickelback songs.
Yeah. And my wild idea.
Have you ever heard that? They had Nickelback, they have those 2 hits.
They're exact.
And you play them over each other, and the verses and choruses all same beat, same key, and it sounds like this.
It's like AC/DC to me. That's always what it is.
Yeah.
Exact.
There was the wild idea I had after season 2 when the numbers started to go down was, what if we just let what we film in a day determine how we edit the episode? So like generally one of 3 things wins the day. You would show up and either the chef would be the coolest part of the most interesting part of the day. The patrons would be the most interesting part. Like you got really funny stuff with people in the crowd, or the food itself was the most interesting thing of the day. And I was like, if you just edit down to what we tell you is the best, like, hey, do more crowd interaction. We had really funny stuff with the guests. Show the kitchen. The chef is really interesting. Like there would be places where we'd have like these meth addicted black dude chefs who are like throwing knives in the back. And I was like, put this guy on. And like, he doesn't have teeth and he's on crack. And I was like, yeah, but it's awesome. Like people will watch this. Like, and one of those guys made it into the trailer for the show. If you find the trailer, you could see this like methed out black guy dancing in the kitchen. And I was like, that guy should be 8 minutes of the show at this trolley car diner in Philadelphia. But yeah, it was like just pivot to what's the funniest thing in the show. Like we had there was this place in Ackworth, Georgia, and it's called oh god, what's the name of it? I'm drawing a complete blank on it. It's a seafood restaurant. Oh god, the chef's gonna be so mad at me for forgetting it. But it's like it's all Southern Creole food. And Henry's Louisiana Grill. Thank God, I was going to hate myself if I forgot that. And this guy Henry's this great like big character, long hair, hippie guy, and he was like he grew up in like the total like antebellum South, and he had not a slave, but a nanny, we'll call her, whose name was Mammy Castile, and so like he had this whole shrine in his restaurant dedicated to like her raising him, and it looked like still shots from The Help, but it was there's an amazing story, and he had so much love for this woman, and he talked about like wanting to like help her cuisine live on and everything else. And I remember having this conversation with our showrunner at the network, and I go, that's such an interesting story about cultures coming together. And they're like, I will not have this man on our network talking about how slavery taught him how to make Creole food. And I was like, okay, well, that's not what it is. But okay, it was literally like my first taste of networks, sort of like, I can see where this could be horribly perceived, and we're not going to tell this story because of how the biggest jerks in the world will interpret it, versus like, I see it as a great story of like learning something culturally that he never would have learned otherwise. And it was like completely respectful and told with so much love the way he told the story and his upbringing. But it was sort of like this idea that they didn't want to show, a black woman, as a nanny raising like a rich white kid. And, it became politicized. And I was just like, this is such a part of his story. And anyone who goes to his restaurant finds it interesting and awesome. That's also why his food is so great, is because it's legit. And, they just completely made it about the optics. They were like, this could look bad, so we can't show any of this. And then
so that's sort of like how they like cancel like Mrs. Butterworth or something. It's like it's kind of also racist, right? Like, we're canceling the black lady because we're being so woke that now that's one less person. I don't know, to kind of cancel that out.
Well, did you guys ever watch Project Greenlight on HBO? So Project Greenlight was a show many years ago where it was like people would enter contests to try to like make their own independent movie, with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck were the producers from one. And anyway, there was this season, the last season they did of it, where they had this black producer on the show named Effie Brown, and she's like super SJW, super woke producer. And there's a scene where there's a black extra who's a limo driver. And she raised hell on set that there was a black person cast as the limo driver. And so Matt Damon goes, great, fire him, send him home. You send him home and tell him he doesn't get paid today because he's black, and you find that offensive, and we'll find a suitable ethnic person. Yeah. What do you want, you want to replace him with a white guy so that it's not racist? Okay, great, let's do that. Let's give a black man's job to a white person so we're not racist. Got it.
The importance of looking not racist is way more important than not being racist.
Right, exactly. It's like, listen, that's why as a comedian, I love where we're at as a society now, because pretty soon people are going to start walking in and going, listen, turns out if we ask you to work in exchange for money at all, we're kind of white supremacists, so we have to fire all the people of color and replace you guys with white people, or else we're part of the problem.
Now, to clarify, every time you're saying black, you're capitalizing that, right?
Yes. Am I supposed to?
Yeah,
whatever the right thing
If you want to
is.
look right at the camera and just say Black Lives Matter for us.
Yes, exactly.
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, the gun is out of the frame, right? That I'm being held hostage with. I joked about that with like Trump's apology videos about the insurrection. I was like, it's a good thing they don't zoom out so you can't see the guns pointed at him. It's like, it's bad, it's wrong. Just like looking around.
Laser dots.
Yeah, exactly.
Flying all over.
Yeah. Go home. Everything's fine here. Go laser dot on his face. Yeah. Oh man, it's wild to me how it's just completely turned around the other way. And now it's like with hosted shows, they're like, oh, we have to make sure that we have the first, transgender Muslim woman to host a food show. It's like, yeah, how's she going to eat through the face covering? You didn't think that one through?
Well, that's a problem for everybody now.
Yeah. Very true. That's very true. Did you see the masks with the hole in the mouth? It's like, how stupid are we? There's a
hole?
Yeah, there was like
a Velcro, like the pajama bottom.
So remember the guy that had the Pac-Man one? He had that like mechanized Pac-Man one that would like open, grab
like
the food, and then he'd open it in the back. Oh my God.
I saw
gnaw it out of the back of his mouth.
There was like a video or like an article from the New York Times that showed a couple at a restaurant, and their masks had like holes where the mouth is, and it's like, okay, now you might as well wear a fake beard. What are you doing?
They should make one that has like a little compartment that's like a food processor in front, and then you put the bite in, and then the hoses squirt it behind the mask in your mouth.
Yeah. Well, how about through your nose, so you don't even have to open your mouth?
That's true. That's good.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, the mental gymnastics it takes to believe that any of that stuff makes a difference is crazy.
Yeah.
And this is like, not to get overly political, but this is the part of like universal health care that nobody ever stops to think about is, did you ever think that if the government starts paying for all your health care, they might just get to say at one point, no more McDonald's? Do you really want to live in that world? Because I'll tell you what, if we get universal health care and then they go, by the way, you can't have McDonald's more than once a month, I'd be like, somebody get my gun. We're going back to the Capitol. I wasn't there the first time, but now it's real.
It's crossed the line.
Yeah.
We at the Babylon Bee want to clarify that we do not support inciting any kind of violence. Thank you. Now back to the...
Yeah, let them take... I have a McDonald's tattoo. Let them take it away from me and see let them pry it from my cold, dead hands.
You do have a McDonald's tattoo?
Yeah, I have a McDonald's...
Is it like hamburger or...
No, I have a tramp stamp, and I have a straw that comes out of my butt crack, and then it says, I'm loving it.
I was going to say, can we see it? But I think...
Yeah. No, I have a photo of it if you guys want to post it in...
No, we don't.
Probably not going to be one of our overlays.
If you guys want to put it up on the wall here or whatever, it'd be great. It would fit in with all of this aesthetic.
With all this stuff. So how are you going to make jokes with Trump not being in office anymore? I mean, that's the only...
I never made jokes about Trump. So
you're good.
I voted for Trump. I was a Trump supporter. Mm-hmm. So not the first time, not in 2016. I voted for Gary Johnson because that was obviously a smart choice. But
Aleppo. Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah. What is Aleppo? I was like, I still think we got this. I think
it's in the bag.
It's like, what's Aleppo? Yeah. But in a way, in hindsight, like that's not that bad. It's not as bad as trying to depression or whatever he said. Yeah. This guy doesn't remember Aleppo, and then Biden's up there and you're like, this guy almost forgot his pants today. Like, he's fine. No, I mean, so yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of comedians are doomed now that Trump is out of the space. Mm-hmm. But those ones sucked in the first place.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw you talked about Jim Gaffigan going bonkers on Trump. I think you said he would never do the same thing about something like abortion.
No, which is interesting to me because he's obviously a pro-life guy. His whole act is about having 5 kids, and he opened for the Pope and is obviously a religious guy. And it's again, like, you had the opportunity to take a stand about something that you're personally involved with and personally passionate about, but it would make you very unpopular in Hollywood. So you don't speak out about that, but you're willing to take the hard path and
turnip
on Trump. And it's like, I don't buy it. I went at Gaffigan in the summer about that because it seemed just opportunistic. I mean, you have this fact about you that's a very unpopular truth, that you're pro-life, and there aren't any real advocates for or that are against abortion that are in the major entertainment space. And as somebody who also feels that way, and recently, by the way, like, part of the reason that I came around to being a pro-life person is that I listened to somebody who didn't agree with me, and they made better points and completely changed my perspective on it. And it made me like a fierce pro-life person of no exceptions. And so to see somebody like Gaffigan, who has the platform to, you want to make good points about something that's difficult, do it about that. But to jump on the bandwagon of hating on Trump, it's like, there's enough of those out there already.
I at least kind of respect the guys that have been doing it for like 5 years or 6 years. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, you've hated Trump this whole time. But when you wait till like 2020, you're like, I'm going to take a stand. Trump is bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually going to come out against Trump in 3 years. I'm actually going to wait until he's long gone. Guys, in hindsight,
Bring it back.
Pretty bad guy. It's just like, but the thing that people don't realize is, with all the censorship and everything going on and shutting him down, everyone's like, can't wait until Trump's gone. I go, you just wait until you see what's next. You might be looking at President Alex Jones in 4 more years. I mean, because we live in this world now where something that's true is getting painted as being radical. And in a world where all truth is radical, then why can't radicals be truthful? And so eventually people will just that line will become so blurred that even the craziest conspiratorial right-wing person will be lumped in with the guy who's just telling the truth, because they're both treated the same way in the public sphere.
Well, and liberals always end up lionizing the Republican president that served 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're like, George W. Bush. Now there was a guy,
Yeah. there was a conservative we could really sink our teeth in, all the great things he did for us and the Middle East. It's just the revisionist history. I remember having, being in entertainment since 2006. I remember having super crazy left-wing fans or friends who were like, we got to get George Bush. George Bush is going to kill the entire country. We got to get him. He is the worst thing since Hitler, and then Barack Obama gets in, and then Trump comes out and he's like, he's the worst thing since Hitler. And it's like, what about Bush? Wasn't he Hitler? No, Bush is Jesus. Compared to this guy, it's just like, it's amazing the lengths that people will go. I had this funny idea I tweeted this, and then I immediately thought this would be like a Babylon Bee headline where it's like, zombie Hitler comes out and condemns Trump, and then the left embraces zombie Hitler. Like, you can't really hold him responsible for the actions of living Hitler. His frontal cortex isn't operating. He's purely medulla. And so, zombie Hitler is actually a great guy. He's now signed by CAA. And he's got a couple TV talk shows in the works and
a podcast.
Yeah,
he gave good speeches.
Yeah,
he was civil. He was.
Yeah, I mean,
he upheld norms.
Yeah,
and stuff.
exactly. I can't wait until we start going back and finding all the ways that Hitler was better than Trump, because those articles are coming for sure. All the ways Hitler wasn't as bad as Trump. I mean, it's the lengths that they'll go to try to paint some sort of picture just completely discredits their arguments. I mean, the article that came out that everybody's making fun of this week of starting to understand multiracial whiteness. I mean, come on, man.
Multiracial.
I couldn't even figure out what they were trying to say.
What are they saying?
Yeah, well, you guys have to wait for my next book on the white supremacy of being black. That's it's a new book that I'm publishing right now. It's just we've gotten to a point with like identity politics where it's completely fallen off the cliff, and now you can't even make good points. That's why I love what you guys do at the Bee. I was telling Ethan before we recorded, I said, The problem I think a lot of people on the right have is that we're over intellectualizing the conversations about the absurdity, and sometimes you just have to do what you guys do at the B and just point out how absurd it is. And I think the left does a better job of that with conservatives, where they make such a mockery of it that and if your response to being ridiculed,
don't even debate.
Don't
make a joke.
Ridicule them back. There's way more material. And I think more people on the right, and this is oftentimes you'll hear people say, like, there are no funny conservative comics. I think that's the problem. I think it's because too often we try to win on intellectualism instead of winning on absurdity. And I think the more you win and beat them at absurdity, because they're giving you way more of a stick to beat them with than we give them, then you just show how ridiculous it is.
You find in comedy, the liberals are definitely the most outspoken, and they probably are the majority. Do you think there's more quiet conservatives or libertarians in comedy, or do people reach out to you because you're so outspoken?
Yeah. When I got canceled in 2018, I had, and I say this all the time and people don't want to believe me, but if I were to pull up my Twitter messages from that time, there were so many white celebrities that messaged me and they were like, "We get what you're saying." They were like, "We agree." And you're right about it. And it is a big problem in our industry, but thanks for taking the bullet. I'm going to stay over here in my Laurel Canyon bunker. That's a frustrating thing when millionaires who are beyond reproach tell you, like, we agree with you, but we wouldn't support you. And then you're like, cool, I got to figure out how to pay rent. Got to figure out how to pay rent this year while I'm right. You know what I mean? Like, my favorite thing is being right and poor. What is your advice on that, celebrity? But it is one of those things of, I think you have to decide if you want to, I think so much about choosing to be a comedian. And I tell people this all the time. I had a good job when I started doing comedy. Like, if I would have never done comedy, I'd still be in the corporate world. I'd be making, at this point, I'd probably be a C-level executive. I mean, I was a multi-unit supervisor at 21 years old. I'm 37 now. If I would have just stayed in that place for 16 years, I'd probably be a COO or something at a company somewhere.
You might have been
vice president.
Might have been Me Too'd by now. Yeah. I don't know. I get that sense. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. But you'd have to touch a woman, I think, to be Me Too'd, and I don't even care for them. No, but what I will say is I've been with one for 9 years. I can't think of anything that would make you like them less. The thing about
Did you hear that in the?
She's laughing.
Did you hear that in the background? Usually you get laughter.
Your wife is here, sir.
Yes, they're all uncomfortable, but she's like, yeah, she hates me too. That's what it is. You guys are both married. You guys both have to know how hated you are at home. That's what it is.
That's the magic of marriage, is that you get to experience the whole gamut of love and hate.
Do you know what makes us love each other is how much we're not everybody else. That's it. I just look at every other woman, I go, thanks for not being that. And she goes, yeah, you too. That's what it is.
No problem.
That's the magic of togetherness, is just going like, ugh, do you see everybody else? And then she goes, ugh, yeah.
That's true.
And then you just go like, oh, thank God we're not them.
I say that all the time.
But yeah, it's like with comedy, I think the good comedians are people that are naturally curious. Mm-hmm. And if you're so closed off to where you won't even hear people that disagree with you, you're not naturally curious enough to be a good comedian. And so you're probably not a good comedian. Right. And there are a lot of people that kind of trick the system where they're likable, Trevor Noah, or they're ethnically diverse, Trevor Noah, or they're, they'll check these boxes that the industry likes, and they'll carve a niche, but like, there's a reason why a guy like Trevor Noah doesn't have a huge podcast like a Joe Rogan. It's like I think the people that are real fans of real comedy find these people and will support them no matter what they do, because they're naturally curious, and the more interesting people begets more interesting comedy. Mm-hmm. And I just think, one of the things that I think is kind of good about COVID and the pandemic is I think it's made everybody kind of reassess where they put their money. Why am I supporting this thing that I don't agree with? Or why am I giving money to this restaurant when they're not politically aligned with what I'm doing? Or, I want to support these restaurants that are refusing to shut down or whatever. I think it's going to be the same way when we come out of this pandemic with comedy. I think where a guy like Jim Gaffigan could have made those comments about Trump and not really felt it before the pandemic is going to feel it after the pandemic. And I think people are going to be far more kind of scrupulous, I guess. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but definitely they're going to hold their purse strings a lot tighter when it comes to making decisions and how personally aligned they are with the side that someone chooses in the intellectual battle, I think is going to determine where they spend their money a lot more. So the idea of like, I disagree with you, but I'll still go support you, I don't think that's going to be out there as much anymore. I think you're going to have to be somebody who picks a side. Like you can't just be, the guys like a Sebastian Maniscalco who really like never say anything politically at all, who are just funny guys, they'll have an audience. But I think the guys who are, more clearly understood about who they are outside of their act are going to have bigger followings and bigger fan bases and things like that. Being a comedian anymore isn't just what you do on stage. People they want to know who you are off stage. They want to know what your opinions are about things. They want to see the full 360. And so I think to be a comedian in the market as where it's headed, you've got to be somebody who opens up your whole life to your audience, and that's got to be interesting too. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and plus you have then there's the divide in big tech and everything. So the platforms, even if you want to be a comedian that's reaching everybody, comedians are naturally going to be getting pushed to this platform and that platform as they divide further and further.
Do you guys think there's like a speakeasy vibe coming back to comedy though? Where so one of the things I found that's interesting, for a long time I didn't want to put something behind a paywall because I found that I was like, well, if it's not massive for free, why would people pay for it? Interestingly enough, more people are supporting my paywall stuff than were supporting my free stuff. Yeah. I think there is it's sort of like the mentality of Facebook when it started about the exclusivity is what made it popular. I think there is, at least with like conservative people, there is this excitement about being part of something that's underground and not for everybody. And so I think live comedy will take the same steps as we open back up, or even as we don't. I mean, I've talked with some comedians. I was like, what if we just did an illegal speakeasy tour?
Oh man!
And did them underground and absolutely just refused to follow those orders and announced our venues the day of, the way some conservative comedians have been doing it for a couple of years now, so people don't try to pick at their shows. It's like, what if we just did what artists used to do in the 60s and 70s? Like when they were arresting Lenny Bruce for obscenity, he was still performing and he was going underground into speakeasies and cafes and just not, be a little rebellious with your art, be a little rebellious with what you're doing. And I think people want to be a part of that. I think audience members want to be a part of it. I think an audience member is more likely to participate in something like that than to just buy tickets off a website and go to the Improv to see, somebody that was on VH1's I Hate the 80s or whatever. So I think like being a fan of a certain comedian is more going to be like being a part of a club than a fan, if that makes sense, a community.
Well, speaking of paywalls, it's time we go behind the curtain to our Babylon Bee subscriber lounge.
Yes, we're going to move and sit in our leather chairs, wear our smoking jackets, and pretend to smoke.
I want to hear more about the tweet you got canceled for.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about that. And I want to talk more about big tech censorship and pizza, I guess.
Pizza.
Which is not a code for anything. It's just pizza.
What would it be a code for?
Oh, you don't know? Okay.
I don't know that.
Is that a t-shirt somewhere? Welcome to the right, where pizza is just pizza.
That's good. That's our shirt. We were trying to find a new shirt idea.
There you go. I'll take a 22% royalty.
Generous.
All right, here we go.
Coming up next for Babylon Bee subscribers.
So you got canceled.
Yeah, in 2018. That was like that was the big time. Would
you like to say your tweet for us?
Sure. Yeah, that's the meme. You just took racism to the third dimension. And by the way, in that scene, what I find funny is kind of
hacksaw.
And so I'll make jokes about race or suicide or death or
Enjoying this hard-hitting interview? Become a Babylon Bee subscriber to hear the rest of this conversation. Go to babylonbee.com/plans for full-length, ad-free podcasts. Kyle and Ethan would like to thank Seth Dillon for paying the bills, Adam Ford for creating their job, the other writers for tirelessly pitching headlines, the subscribers, and you, the listener. Until next time, this is Dave D'Andrea, the voice of the Babylon Bee.